Welcome to On the Couch, a regular catch-up where we talk about some of the issues facing marketing and advertising and hopefully provide some solutions. Today I'm joined by renowned and respected media and advertising industry commentator, Simon Canning. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Darren. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining me on the couch here.
It's a comfy couch.
Look, obviously in your career, working both in trade media and also on the agency side, you must have seen some big mistakes made. What do you think the biggest mistake agencies typically make when they're dealing with the trade press?
Look, I think the biggest mistake is assuming knowledge on behalf of the media they're dealing with. The trade media typically has a fairly high turnover of journalists coming through. Many of them are very young. They don't have a great deal of experience. And when one makes an assumption about what they may or may not know about the story you're trying to tell, it's very easy for them to get it wrong and completely misconstrue or misrepresent what you're trying to talk about. So don't make assumptions about what the journalists might understand about your campaign. Be really upfront, be really forward, and make sure that all of the questions they might have are answerable, that there are no doubts about what they're reporting on. It's a really important thing because it's easy to get wrong. Because
the industry has become so complex, it's important to set a context, isn't it, for many of the issues that we're dealing with today?
Absolutely. And I mean, even somebody in my experience, we've seen so much new stuff come into play these days that, it's always journalists can be dangerous in assuming they know what's going on. Good journalists will always ask you more and more and more. When they don't understand, they'll say it. But you can't assume that they'll admit that. So you really need to give them all of the tools to tell your story properly.
So how can agencies be better at sort of building their profile through, the trade media or just generally?
I think one of the major things that you can do, and it's easy for anybody to do, is to simply create a conversation. Start a conversation. Don't start every interaction you have with trade media or a journalist with the basis that you're aiming to get a story out of it. Create a relationship, start a conversation, build trust with that journalist. And then when you have a story to tell, they'll trust you, they'll know you, they'll get what you're on about, and you'll be able to much better be able to have your story told in a way that will largely you have a bit of control of, because it won't simply be an interaction that started from, I have a story to pitch you. It will be an interaction that started from, let's talk about what we think of the industry. How can I help you? How can you help me? Conversations.
So beyond what we read, like executive appointments and new business wins, what else can agencies be talking about to start building that conversation?
Look, I think one of the big question marks, one of the big things that the industry faces is revenue models and business models. Talking about those when you're being innovative, when you're looking at different ways of doing things. And we're talking about an industry that has largely failed to really shift its revenue model for some 25 odd years since the end of accreditation. When you're talking from the creative side of the business, when you're talking about the media side of the business, similarly the same sort of things. So think about revenue models, ideas, innovations, things that are fresh and new, not things that are just recapturing old ideas. It's about innovation and new thought processes.
So looking at, over the years, the really successful agencies, what do you think is the consistent thing that they've done that's built a great reputation for an agency?
I think a great reputation is about understanding that you are having conversation with people out in the marketplace. You aren't necessarily always in control of that message, and you get that, you understand that, and you're willing to put up occasionally with a bit of failure where messages haven't gone the way you might expect, and you go back and you recalibrate and you start again. The successful agencies don't go and, oh my God, the whole castle has burnt down. They turn around and say, okay, we've miscalculated on that, it's not gone the way we wanted, let's go back, let's rethink things, let's have a go again.
And I think that's one of the things that I find when I talk to agencies. They wonder about, what's the best way of engaging? I think that there's a basic lack of trust.
Trust is what it's all about. As I've told everybody in the industry since I started as a journalist 35 years ago, the only commodity that I bring to the table is trust. Trust to be able to talk to people on background, and that can take a very long time to do. Don't assume it's going to happen overnight. Don't declare what you have overnight, because journalists can screw you over. It's a fact of life, and it's going to happen. Because when a good story presents itself and you've had a slip of the tongue and you don't have that level of trust, then you can really find yourself in trouble. Remember, it's not Chatham House rules. Everything is ultimately on the record. So consider who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, and what you're declaring to them. But if you have that trust and you can have that conversation right at the very beginning, as I said, if you can have a conversation with journalists and have an understanding, it's much easier for them to get the story right and for you not to go and put your foot in it.
So an agency CEO watching this and wanting to really start engaging with lifting the profile of their business, what would you recommend to them?
Look, the thing I'd recommend is firstly, begin to have conversations. Just grab a cup of coffee with somebody, have a chat about what they're looking for in terms of their coverage, what their title is looking for. Then move it on from there and engage the people within your agency in it as well. Have them as part of the conversation. Certainly you can be at the very forefront of the conversation, but give a little bit of access, create a bit of a network that a journalist can tap into for opinion, ideas, guidance. When you're able to pick up the phone to somebody and talk to somebody just to get an understanding of what a bigger industry issue is, that's massively important, because it allows those journalists to be able to make much clearer calls about what's going on. So it's like, create that conversation, but then think about what is in the best interest of your agency, your clients, and think about those times where not everything's going to be a story. Be selective about when you want to go to market.
So you're saying don't do the mass mail out of your press release then?
Look, mass mail outs of press release work at a certain level. They work at a level where it's going to get published by certain publications simply because they publish all the press releases. Yeah. It's that simple. If you want to have something that's more tightly considered and presented in a much better way, and presented with the view through the eyes of a journalist, through the eyes of a storyteller, which all journalists, I hope, aspire to become. If you want to have it told that way, then really you have to consider whether you're going to give it to a single publication. It doesn't matter whether it's a
single journalist.
Or a single journalist, and allow it to be presented. And then the other thing I think is really important, is consider who the audience is of that particular publication. There are very clear audiences for all of the trade publications out there. It's pretty obvious what they are. There are some that have more mass market reach. There are some, obviously, that aren't even trade, that are trade sections within mainstream, such as the Financial Review and the Australian. So consider what the audience is. I always tell all the people I work with, what do you want to achieve at the end of it? What is it you want to get out of this? What is the message you want to get across? And then go back to the start, consider the story journey and who might be a partner in that journey along the way. But one thing that every journalist loves is an exclusive.
Absolutely. Great advice, Simon. Thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks, Darren.
And thank you for joining us on the couch. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and stay tuned for more On the Couch coming soon.